Hey guys, it's Dorr and Coch. In today's video, we're going to be going over our top 5 rifles in the realm of recent innovation. Obviously things have been innovating and continuing on since forever, but we're going to go ahead and take it back to the SCAR, which was kind of the first big post-AR M1A military innovation that we saw. And then, that program wasn't perfect, but it was a starting point. But there's been a lot of innovation since, so we're going to get into it. All right, guys, so before we get into it, obviously rifles are kind of your go-to best jack-of-all-trades lethal option, but sometimes you don't want to just stop the conversation. You want to really get your point across. It's like, I don't want to kill you necessarily. I just want you to see things my way. And, when it comes down to that, there's an entire industry wrapped around that less than lethal response. And we've paired with the Home Security Superstore. They're a new sponsor of the channel. And this place is, a warehouse, one-stop shop for all of those, teaching aids you might need to.
You have your options there, right? Yeah. So if you don't want to use lethal force, once a situation has developed, they've got pepper balls and tasers and batons, stuff like that less lethal effect. But also they'll go into security systems, so you've got cameras, and
you need to be able to find them before you can teach them.
So you've got a bunch of different layers of security and your ability to take care of business on a less lethal level, right?
Right on. So check them out in the description below. And yeah, buddy, let's get into it.
Right on.
Yeah. All right, guys. So like we said, we're going to talk about, military rifle, carbine, whatever you want to call it, innovation of the past. I guess it's been 20 years since the inception of this thing really got going.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? About 20 years.
Man.
That flew.
And, in previous videos, we've talked about our experience with this thing, very controversial. There's a lot of, whatever you want to call it, DC stuff going on.
There were some perceived shortcomings of the current rifle system back in the early 2000s. So we want to look at what could we replace it with, and the soft combat assault rifle, that was the program that we started to look into other options. Now that started the ball rolling, because once we started that, this is the heavy version. The light version was 5.56. It was meant to replace your M4, but honestly, they had some issues. Right? We moved on. The SCAR Heavy kept going because we didn't have any replacement for the M14. The M14 was not ideal for what we were using. Now, the shortcomings here, the reciprocating charging handle, people had issues with. Might bite your thumb if you don't, but it's a training thing, right? The UGG boot stock, the lack of rail space. Yeah. So these are things that, on my personal SCAR, which is this one here, there's aftermarket stuff, to fix those.
And, Coach was very big part of the development. Some of the things that he recommended ended up actually on the Mark 17 final product. My experience with this thing was just using it, in a battle rifle and sniper rifle configuration, and it worked. Not my favorite, but I got the job done. But what this thing really did was kickstart innovation. The industrial military complex, whatever you want to call it, was full steam ahead, firing on all cylinders in the 2000s. A lot of money being thrown around, and capitalism, innovation, it's really the big it's what makes us a superpower, frankly. And the private sector started hitting the drawing boards and coming up with not AR replacements.
Yeah.
And that's what we're here to talk about today.
Yep. A lot of what we saw, once you take the guns apart, it's like they took the SCAR requirements document and started working towards it. So we'll look into that. We start with the Bren 2.
Let's start with the Bren 2.
Why not?
Alrighty. All right, guys. So starting off with the Brent 2, we don't have one here with us. I have used them. I have shot them. I shot the original Bren. A friend of ours has one, and he was rocking it as kind of his main jam. And instantaneously, I picked it up, and it was just a heavy Scarlight because I shot the Scarlights a little bit as well.
Scarlight was a 7-pound gun.
Yeah,
and this thing was a few more pounds.
And this
noticeably,
it was a very well made. It was very accurate. It was just a little bit on the heavy side. So they went back to the drawing board and they came out with the Bren 2, which is just kind of a lightened, a little bit better version. I think a little easier to wield. And they're very accurate. They're very well made. I like it, the Bren 2, a lot.
It's piston driven with a non-reciprocating charging handle, but to my eyes, it looks very Scar-esque.
Yeah, and you can see that a lot of the ergonomics are that AR-M16 pattern. They wanted to keep as much of that the same. You saw that on the Scar, and these guys kind of kept going with that. You're going to see a lot of that in today's video is, yes, the operating systems are different. Yes, the guns are very different in a lot of ways from the original that it was replacing, but to the individual user, those selector switches are in the same spot, the safeties, the mag releases.
Uses M16 or AR-15 magazine.
Same ammo, same mags. So the Bren 2, is coming in at about 7.3 pounds, which is right where I think 5.56, carbine should be. They can get them in different barrel lengths. The 16-inch for civilian use is going to be the most common, but it has the more military, shorter barrel variants. It's a piston gun. It uses both aluminum and polymer parts to kind of lighten that load.
Got your folding stock, and you can shoot it.
With the stock folded.
Very similar to, like I said, we'll see a lot with a lot of these. It's like they took the Scar requirement document and just kind of made it their own. Now, for price, they're going to be
it's a CZ, so it's
somewhere around half of what you're going to pay for a Scar Light these days.
But all these guns are pretty pricey. Money's just not worth what it was. So don't hate on the manufacturers too much. But all in all, they're a cool gun. They're a niche gun. If you're into CZ, if you're into that kind of higher end European stuff, definitely check it out. Cool gun for the collection. But I just thought the big thing for me is the Bren 2 is what the Bren should have been from the beginning. Because the first one is just, it's like a DMR. You're just like lugging this thing out.
In 5.56.
Yeah. It's almost like an A-dub, but it took a magazine. But anyway, I was impressed with it. And, it's just the first one on our list. So what do we got next, bud?
Next one, we'll get the Magpul Masada, which would then became the Remington ACR, right?
Yeah.
Adaptive Combat Rifle, I think is what the ACR stands for.
Yeah.
And again, about the time that the Scar document had been released, these guys got a copy of it, and they tried to beat FN. I think, this is my speculation, they tried to beat FN to the civilian market with their version. And the whole idea was that you were going to have, multiple barrel lengths and calibers and all this other cool stuff, which never really materialized. So
the Masada, was a Magpul weapon system, and they were kind of one of the first that really saw this, what the Scar program was bringing out of the industry, what the potential was on the civilian market, and maybe with other government entities. They had it out, I think, in the mid-2000s, like 2006, 7, but it didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, they developed it, and then they sent it over to Remington. Remington bought it out.
Yeah, it's almost like too soon, too soon, too fast. People just loves me gun, the freaking ban had just dropped. Everybody was buying ARs. Everybody was cool anyway. And maybe it was just too much too soon. But they ended up selling it to Bushmaster, which is part of Remington. And I've got to mess with them, and they're great guns. They work, they're light, they seem reliable enough. I haven't torture tested or really beat one down. I haven't seen any government nug E-types really put it through their paces, but everything that I've seen is positive. Shooting it's fine. I didn't seem gassy. It didn't seem too many issues. It wasn't too thick or chubby or, in any of the wrong places, like the Bren what we already talked to was. All around cool, and it was a very early design, which you should give it credit, as they were able to put together something that worked well, and they were almost like first to the market.
Well, Magpul has a history of innovations. The guy says, it'd be easier to pull these magazines out of my pouch if I had this little thing attached to it. So they made those. And next thing you know, they're making furniture for ARs. And so that company has a history of innovation. And they saw that, they jumped on it. But I think they sold it at the right time, because it didn't really go anywhere. But I don't even know if they still make them. You can find them on the secondary market. But the big thing about them is that they were saying, because it's adaptive, you can change barrel lengths and change calibers and then that stuff
things
will go up.
Definitely more modular. Piston.
It was the modularity was the new hotness, right?
Right. The piston, the modularity, to be able to fold that buttstock and still be able to operate the weapon system. And Magpul proved that a smaller company new to firearms design could make a great one. I just don't think America was really ready for it quite yet. It was ahead of its time, like I said before. And all in all, get on them. Alrighty, fast forwarding closer to the present, I think up next, which will be number 3, we have the PSA Jackal. That's the Palmetto State Armory. And
we just happen to have all those bad boys.
Happen to have one of these bad boys right here. And Coach wants to take us through this one. This thing, I like it. That started off with the pistol length, the shorties, and then just this year at SHOT Show we saw the full length carbine versions, and they're selling those now. And I mean, we have shot the heck out of this thing quite a bit. And I think there's even some scars on it for where I dropped it on some rocks, and when we were down in a riverbed. But this thing's really cool. And the seamless.
One of the coolest things about this is basically you've got your AR-15 lower, so the upper can be attached to any AR-15 lower. It comes with the adapter, this little plate, and the Picatinny rail in the back, so you can mount your pistol braces, things like that. The reason that you can do this is it doesn't have a buffer tube back here. The buffer tube was a good idea at the time, keeps all your recoil in line. But honestly, for something like this, it's fine. So you've got 2 recoil springs that are now up here rather than back here, which frees this up so you can have make this fold. It also, with the piston, keeps all the gas exchange up here in front, which keeps the bolt cooler. And it's just it's a good solid design. PSA makes good stuff, and they're another one innovating, good company when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, they make complete weapon systems as well that are purpose built. I think they run at about $1,300 give or take MSRP. You can get them in different barrel lengths, depending on
They've got I think 5.56 and 300 blackout that are real easy to
but they're
to get.
Fairly inexpensive way to get into the game. If you're looking to get into the more modern type platforms. And I mean, have you had any issues with this thing?
No. I don't even think I've had a. So when we were shooting it, it has an adjustable gas system, and so if you get it adjusted too light, not enough gas, it won't cycle. But if you're putting a can on it or anything like that, if you're in a free state, you can have cans. You're gonna need that, to adjust the gas here with this but that's the only issue that we've had. Everything else, I mean, it cycles everything. We've had steel ammo, steel case, just the cheap, Russian stuff, just all kinds of stuff, and it digests it like nothing. So far so good. With, I don't know, a couple thousand rounds through it now, I think. It's never malfunctioned on me, so it's a good product. Whether you buy the the whole item from PSA or just the upper kit to put on your existing AR lower. Because it's an AR lower, it has AR triggers. So any AR trigger you want to throw in there, and there's a bunch of them. They're all over the place now, right? So you can kind of tweak this one to however you like it.
Yeah, so, on the barrel lengths on here, obviously they've got the 16, but they've also got 13.7, 14.5, and those are, more designed for the full-length carbine versions, and then they have the shorters, they have the shorties as well. You can get them in 5.56 and 300 blackout. And it was just a cool, cheap option, and these things just run.
Yeah, as far as we know, there's no, countries looking for this as a military weapon, but, for civilians, hell, I think it's a good option. And guys, before we get on with more of this innovation, just want to remind you, if you like this content, like, subscribe, leave us comments, help that algorithm so that we can get this out to more people. And you want to talk about the War Room real quick?
Yeah, guys, the War Room is just our private community where we can really kind of get in depth, nerd out, go crazy, whatever you want to call it. Social media, the list of what we can and can't talk about, what we can and can't do, what is and is not acceptable just keeps getting more and more stringent. I swear like I'm back in freaking Catholic school. Sister. Anyway, so it's a private online community. It's a subscription-based, and but we're on there quite a bit. And as we get closer into the new year, we've got quite a bit planned, so hope to see you there. Which brings us to number 4.
Number 4.
And number 4 is the AHK 433. And you're probably not familiar with the AHK 433, not very many are, and that's what intrigues me the most about it, because I've seen them, I've handled them. I don't think I've shot them. Maybe I like to go to the HK range days, but
he gets to go. I don't.
This thing is like a 416 G36 hybrid. And the 416s are great. Everybody loves the 416, but it's still an AR-15. It still has a buffer tube buttstock that you can't fold or get rid of. And they are a little bit heavier than your standard AR. But they're reliable. They're good guns. I don't have any issues with them. But it's still an AR. And, I love ARs. We're here to talk about post-AR, living in this post-AR world. And I think this HK 433, as far as on the American market, is kind of an untouched gem. Yeah. It's, everything they make is very well made, very reliable, very robust. They have had a few instances where that wasn't so much the case, but those programs never came to fruition. This one, it really seems like it's taking the best of the 416 line and the G36 line and kind of meshing them together. The lower kind of looks more AR-15-ish. It takes standard magazines, the safety's in the right place, mag releases, though it has ambidextrous controls, which you're going to see on more modern firearms. The buttstock folds no problem. And the reason why it's kind of exotic and nobody really knows about it or gives it the time of day, I think has to do mostly with they went with their tried and true, G3-esque charging system. And so it's got that MP5 style, where it is on the G3 or the G33 in order to charge it. Though you can pull the lever out and stick it over on the other side. It is completely ambidextrous. But it's out of the way.
And it folds out of the way. That's the biggest thing. And it's not reciprocating. So, there's no retraining that happens like with the SCAR.
Cool.
But as I saw the thing is, first time I saw it, I'm watching a guy take it apart. I'm like, it's almost like they took, again, that SCAR paper and built a gun to it, because the operating system.
To give credit where credit's due, it all goes back to the AR-18. The only, the man, the myth, Eugene Stoner had sold off his AR-15 patent to Colt, and they got that going, and then he had this AR-18, which is now what we're using in modern time as an operating system, ready to go. And based on research and what I've heard, the AR-18 was ready to go to field trials in like 1968 or something like that.
Yeah.
And it just got completely shelved, completely, pushed aside because the machine had already picked its horse, its dark horse.
It's funny because the AR-18, it's like it was, it's the most successful, unsuccessful rifle ever made, because the operating system has been just duplicated across the board.
And this 433 definitely falls into that category. It's kind of a son of SCAR or son of 18 or whatever you want to call it. and I think they're awesome. You know, you can get them in different barrel lengths, different calibers. There's some modularity there.
They got the weight right. You know, we'll see what else they come up with.
To me, it feels balanced. It feels good. It's not super front heavy like a lot of the old HK stuff was, because it was all plastic in the back.
And H&K traditionally likes to overbuild things and make things, you know, they're very robust and they'll take a hit, but they get heavy pretty quick. Mark 23 comes to mind.
Yeah, that wasn't their fault. That was our fault. Yeah. But anyway, hit us up in the comments if you have any direct experience with these things, or you know anybody that uses them. But I think it was kind of overlooked. They're a powerhouse company, but they are a small company. People don't realize how small HK is. Like FN and SIG and these other ones just have these massive warehouses with massive amounts of employees. And HK doesn't. They're actually pretty small, and they do cater more to the government contracts. But I don't know. We'll see.
And they're building it in the United States, just like FN and SIG. Everything's built here, even though it's a foreign-owned company.
Yeah. But HK is a company that I really like. They're kind of niche. You don't see them as much here in the United States like some of the other companies, but they've been around forever, and their battlefield record is second to none.
I grew up with their MP5, used it for years, so I got nothing bad to say.
Cool. Alrighty. So gushing over the one that got away.
Yeah.
And now it brings us to the last one on our list, guys, and that is the Sig Sauer MCX line.
Yeah.
These things I got nothing bad to say about them. They even stayed more true to that traditional M4 pattern of operation and ergonomics than the other guys did. And these things are great, man. The MCX line, so you've got the big boy is the Spear, and that's been selected as kind of this new battle rifle niche for the U.S. military.
Yeah, and they're saying it's to replace the M4. But I don't think that's how this is going to work.
But it is a battle rifle, and it does have a flat shooting round that can punch to apparently level 4 plates. Not that anybody on YouTube's seen the black tip ammo yet, but we'll get there when we can. Yeah. But they have the Rattler line, which is kind of their PDW subgun. It's designed around the 300 blackout cartridge, but it does take 5.56. That is the one I do have experience with. Those were coming into the inventory at my last job before I left, and I had one for a little while, but I didn't do anything cool with it. We just messed around with them. They come in a pretty cool kit. So you've got different barrel lengths. You have the 5.5 and the 8.5, I believe. And I don't know what they landed on when it went into like full production, but the idea was to have a 5.5-inch barrel with a shorty handguard, so that you can run those subsonic loads and have that shorty PDW capability. And then you can swap all that out for, I believe, an 8 or 8.5-inch barrel with a longer handguard. And then you can run supersonic blackout out of that. And I, again, haven't done anything cool with them, but I know people that have. And supposedly it'll knock you over at 400 yards, no problem.
Well, it's what
with a supersonic round.
The system that SIG is creating is kind of like what the M14 program was supposed to do back in the day. But they went, oh, here's your one gun with a 20-inch barrel and 20-round magazine.
22-inch barrel.
Yeah, it's long. It's long. But they're going to take this thing, and it was going to replace everything from your grease gun through your BAR.
Which the designers never in a million years were planning on. It was just assholes.
You can't do that. All right, but military planners, the bean counters, the guys that are so detached from the whole thing, that's what they were pushing. Well, what SIG's done here is, instead of saying, okay, here's your one gun that's going to take all these spots, they've got your battle rifle, and right next to that, ergonomic commonality. That's the buzzword, right? So everything that works on the big one works on your intermediate size, your assault rifle. And then nothing changes as you go down to your Rattler, to your subgun. Whereas, as I went through training, we had M60s, which were, the manual arm was completely different than, your M14 and your M16 and your MP5. So every time you switched, missions and had to switch your weapon system, it was a whole different
AR-15, MP5.
Yeah, just completely different manual of arms. So it was, it wasn't ideal. But if looking at what SIG's doing here, if you keep that ergonomic commonality, that tap rack is going to be the same no matter what. Your mag change is going to be the same no matter what. So it makes sense to put all these things together. That's where I see this. Not only is SIG a good company, they make a good product, reliable, but that concept of ergonomic commonality throughout the platforms, that's where I'm excited about, and that's where that innovation that I'm ready for that one.
Yeah, and they're no longer the future on the horizon. I mean, this operating system is kind of fastly becoming the standard, and it's light years ahead of the original SCAR platform. But we had to start somewhere, and we got to see what worked and what didn't work with that one, and SIG was able to develop this thing over time, and the rollout's been really smooth. I haven't heard of any problems either on the civilian or military side, and they're just great. More and more people they're popping up more and more, and
now the spear, the detractors for the big boy it weighs a bunch.
Yeah, it's a battle rifle.
You start adding capability. They're like, oh yeah, it weighs 13 pounds. That's like going back to carrying a BAR, which was like 16 pounds or something. Mm-hmm. They're like, but what do you have? You had a gun that shot with iron sights, and that was it with your BAR. Mm-hmm. This thing is going to have a lot better capability. It's got rails. You can mount stuff to it. The optic, the lasers, all that stuff. It adds weight, sure, but it also adds capability. And finding that sweet spot where you add the things that you need for that extra capability, but also understand that 100 pounds of lightweight gear still weighs 100 pounds. It's but being modular, being able to pick your weapon system for your mission, that makes a whole lot more sense to me.
All right, guys. So, that was our list, our 5. We picked them, based on our personal preferences, experiences, and just kind of the innovation of it all. They all kind of are, in some ways, the same, but in some ways a little bit different. Mm-hmm. And, it's just cool. There just wasn't any change for so long, and it was so long that you didn't even think about it, and then all of a sudden, just in this past 10 years, we've really kind of seen the game changers and some of these platforms really getting traction, and it's cool. Hit us up in the comments, let us know what your top 5 is, what if we missed anything. Want to just kind of keep it relevant to the late 2000s, 2010s, just more modern era and kind of how we got here. But we'd love to hear your take in the comments. And I don't know, buddy, you got anything else?
Nah, it's good for me.
All righty. Dorr, Coach, out.